Welcome to this workshop where we'll talk about job interviews. These are conversations where employers evaluate job seekers to see which one best matches their needs. These are also conversations where job seekers evaluate employers to see which one best matches their needs. It's important to remember both parts of this. A job interview is not just putting your best performance forward with the hope of being selected, although that is important for sure. But the other aspect is important too, where you are evaluating the employer.
We'll organize this video into 3 parts: getting ready before the interview, answering commonly asked questions, then following up. I'll put chapter markers into the video so that you can navigate the part that you want to watch first and skip to others that you maybe don't need to review until later. Step 1. Mentally and psychologically prepare for interviews by researching the company. The more you know about the company, the better prepared you are to answer their questions and understand their mindset. Read through the company website again. Be clear about the company's mission and values. Write notes about current projects and how you can contribute. Check out company social media pages on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. You might also find the company in media articles, or you might find reviews from past employees on Glassdoor. A Google search is likely to turn up interesting information. Remember, the company is going to look at your social media postings, so it's only fair for you to look at theirs. Next, visualize yourself at work for this company. Imagine what you might do there, what success there would look like for you, and how you can share your skills and knowledge. But make sure you're aligning your vision with what you have already kind of promised in your resume and cover letter. Print and review how you have presented yourself to the company so far. Try to expand on that and stay consistent with it. You should have a printed copy of these documents nearby as you have your interview, because it's pretty likely that some questions will stem from points that you've written.
It may feel hard to imagine this right now, but people often succeed in ways that are wildly beyond what they ever imagined. So as you prepare for your job interview, I encourage you to let yourself dream a little and let yourself have lots of dreams, because there's a good chance that, one of them may come true. Just manage your expectations and be sure to celebrate your small achievements along the way. You won't know for sure which dream is going to come true until you're looking backwards and you see the steps in hindsight.
The next step is getting ready to practice. This means role-play interviews with a family member or a friend. You can actually even do this with your children. They will encourage you to explain yourself clearly.
Remember that employers are looking for problem solvers. And since in theory we are all problem solvers, that means that you are too. And if an employer has invited you for an interview, it means that they believe you can probably solve their problems. But they are going to test that. They want to know if you can, if you have the ability to solve their problems. And the way that you offer proof about this is you tell stories about how you have solved similar problems in the past. As I said, we provide the proof of our problem-solving experience through our stories. The problem is we don't always remember what we did, or if we do remember, we don't always see it as important. But an employer does see those actions as important. So they want to know what exactly you did to solve problems in the past. So think about what an employer might need and what you've done in a situation in the past that could solve a potential problem for that employer. The funny thing about stories is that they are never well told the first time. They take practice to get them right. Often they don't have enough detail, or they have too much detail, or they have the wrong emphasis, or maybe they go off into some kind of weird tangent. In order to get a story into a position where you can tell it well, you have to practice it. The practicing and the editing of your stories is really valuable work. I can't stress this enough. Getting your accomplishment stories into good shape is something that is going to help you throughout your career. So practicing stories that will answer interview questions is a really good use of your time in your job search.
Here are some key tips. Don't try to memorize word for word. It's good to have some natural variation. Instead, aim to remember key details and transitions and tell stories concisely, focusing on your individual actions. Practice so that you can experience the emotions that go with the story and feel them before the actual interview. Ask your interview practice partner for feedback about answer length and quantitative versus qualitative information. Your interview will be either in person, on the phone, or on video chat. Here are some tips for each type. Let's start with in person. Find out where the office is and how to get there. Consider a practice trip at the same time as your interview and see how long it takes so that you're on time. Plan to be 15 minutes early for your interview. Memorize your interviewers' names and positions, and research what people wear to work by asking a network contact or analyzing the website photos if available, and plan to dress a little more formal than what you see. Prepare your clothes in advance, see if you need to launder or iron clothes or shine your shoes, and get everything laid out the night before. Here are some tips for video chat interviews. Check out the calendar invitation you received to see if your meeting will be on Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, or elsewhere. Next, try a practice chat with a friend if you haven't used the platform before. Double check and re-evaluate the background that you're going to use to ensure that you feel comfortable with what a new employer will see. Make sure that you have adequate lighting on your face. Don't sit with your back to a window. That's going to make your face look like it's in a shadow. Use a headset with a mic so that you can improve the quality of your sound. Check in advance that everything is working. Listen for and try to eliminate any disruptive noises. Log on at least 10 minutes early to test your setup. Before we share tips for phone interviews, I want you to consider this. In case you're on the SkyTrain or a bus or in some other noisy place and you get a call that you think might be from an employer, just let the phone call go to your voicemail and then try to reschedule it when you're in a quieter place and when you're ready to accept the call and talk. Phone screens are mainly done to ensure that you're going to meet the qualifications in the posting. There are not usually any behavioral questions. Instead, they're mostly confirming details that you've written in your resume. So you'll want to make sure that you can hear the interviewer clearly and that you're able to respond accurately. In case you do happen to answer the call when you're on the bus, tell the interview that now's not a good time and ask if you can schedule it at a time when you are freer. And then try to imagine what you're going to be asked, kind of prepare and anticipate what the questions will be before you have that call. And then get yourself to a quiet place, free from distractions, and try to take notes during the call so that you can remember what you've said and what they've asked. And this will help you to prepare in case you're selected to move further in the interview process. Part 2, 5 commonly asked question types. There are 5 commonly asked types of questions in interviews. Let's look at each one. First, polite and small talk questions. These are simply to help the interviewer and you feel more comfortable having a conversation. However, your responses are still judged, so you must be careful to answer positively. Next, confirming your experience questions. These are intended to test that you really did the work that your resume claims, or to get more details about something that you wrote in your resume. The next type is self-awareness questions. These are mainly about your ability to identify and manage your own way of working and your performance. Next, behavioral and achievement questions. These ask for specific examples of your past experience or hypothetical examples of what you would do when faced with particular circumstances. They often begin with, "Tell me about a time when," or "What would you do if something happened?" And finally, negotiation questions. Now, these relate to the features of a job like salary or when you can start, to see if you and the employer are feeling aligned when it comes to these very specific aspects of work. I've asked Global Talent Loan's Juvenita Monteiro to join us for this part of the video so that you'll hear some of her suggestions for answering a few commonly asked questions. Let's start with the polite small talk questions. You can see some samples of these questions on the slide. You'll often hear questions about the weather, if you found it hard to find the office, or if you had any difficulty, with a Zoom link. The interview is really going to start with "Tell me about yourself." But this is really intended as kind of a soft, gentle question. Try to give a 1-minute overview about yourself. We often call this the elevator pitch. Another question you're likely to be asked is, "Why do you want to work here?" Notice that I have really stressed the "here" part of the question because the interviewer is really concerned about what you think about working for them. Juvenita has some tips to share on how she would answer this question.
Yeah, so usually the employers are hoping to hear how you will bring value to the company. So always do your research about the company, read their mission, values. The more you know, the better. Companies like if a candidate has done good research about the company. This makes them feel that the candidate is eager and motivated to work in the company. So look at the press releases and social media accounts of the company. This helps you to know what matters most to the company. So while I was working as a recruiter, sometimes this is a general question which we ask, and when I ask them, they would be like, "Oh, I don't know anything about the company," and it kind of puts you off, because if you are interested in working in this company, at least do some of your research, right? And
Yes, agreed, Juvenita. There's another question that you're almost always asked, and it's another one of those polite or small talk questions, but it's really important, and it comes at the very end of an interview, and it is, "Do you have any questions, or do you have any other questions? And Juvenita has some suggestions for you.
So as a recruiter, my top questions where candidates usually ask me, what's your favorite part of working here? What do you like about this company and the company's culture? I feel candidates want to know and, what exactly they're getting into. So yeah, those are some of the great questions. And yeah, what are your expectations for me in this role? This makes the recruiter or the hiring manager feel that you are interested in, knowing more about the role.
The next type of question is related to confirming information in your resume or LinkedIn profile. You might be asked to walk an employer through your resume and talk about different experiences you've had. You might be asked for more details and what exactly you did at a previous company, or to tell about your experience with a particular type of work, or working on a particular type of project, or even how your skills are at using a particular program or tool.
These confirming questions are asked with the goal of checking that what you've actually written on your resume, that those things are things that you've actually done. So if you can speak about them, it's kind of a proof that says that you really did what's on your resume.
The next type of question that you'll be asked is related to self-awareness. Some questions will include the following. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your goals? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Employers are looking for you to describe yourself and show both your good points and your not as good points. Humble proud means you explain your good qualities with somewhat modest adjectives, and by most importantly, sharing quotes that someone else has said about you, ideally a previous supervisor. So, for instance, I'm comfortable with JavaScript, but my previous coworkers always called me the JavaScript guru because I was always able to help them with JavaScript issues. Or here's another example. Yeah, I definitely know my way around writing a resume, but one of my clients once told me I moved the dial on her resume from 2 to 10. Juvenita is going to share her advice on responding to the "what is your weakness" question.
So always be honest. Do not lie about your weaknesses because managers want to work with honest people. And while working as a recruiter, sometimes candidates were like, I do not have any weakness. And that's not humanly possible because we are humans and we will have some weaknesses. So always link your weakness to an improvement plan so that the interviewer knows you're working on it. For example, if you struggle with procrastination, outline how you have adopted new time management strategies to organize your schedule and stay on task. So if you struggle with, disorganization, you can say something like, I can have a hard time staying organized, although not to the point where it affects my performance. I tend to be less efficient when my desk is messy or cluttered. So I've learned to set aside time every week to clean my digital and physical space. This has helped my energy levels and made me more detail oriented. And you should always avoid naming your weaknesses that paint you as a risky hire or incapable of fulfilling the job description. So if you're applying for a team lead position, you cannot say I struggle working with people. Then it's something which is like a red flag and they won't be hiring you.
Our next type of questions commonly asked in interviews is behavioral and achievement questions. And these are probably the question types the job seekers worry about the most. And there really is good reason for this because these are probably the most complex questions and the questions that people will prepare for the most. So let's look at a couple of samples. Interviewers will often ask for you to tell about a time when something happened, often something negative. And what did you do as a result of that negative experience? Another type of question is asking for an accomplishment. So this is a little bit more positive. Tell me about a time when, you achieved something, and how did it happen? What did you do? So these are the types of questions that we're looking at here. They can be about something good or something bad, and they might be also phrased as, what would you do if something happened? Either way, you benefit from telling a story that explains you in a positive light. So even questions about negative experiences, like failing at a project, even these questions can show that you are resilient and you learn from mistakes. To answer these questions, we suggest you use the STAR strategy. Here's what the letters in STAR mean. We start with S, and that means situation. S means you start with a requirement or a problem, and then the place and the time where you encountered this challenge. T stands for task. That means what you were expected to do as part of your job. A stands for action, and this is the most exciting part, what actions you took. Maybe they were expected, maybe they were beyond expectations, but this is the part where you really shine. And finally, R is about the result. So what happened because of your actions, and how did the employer benefit? Here's an example about answering a STAR question in which you wanted to show some proof about your public speaking ability in English. Last year at X company, I gave a talk in English at the annual general meeting. It had been a difficult year because of all the inflation. I was working in the finance department at the time. I prepared a slide deck and I spoke for 10 minutes. I was nervous, but I used relaxed breathing ahead of time to stay calm. And I even included simple jokes. The audience responded well to my talk. When I finished, they smiled and clapped, and afterward, several people, including the CEO, complimented my speaking ability. Here's how STAR statements look if you think about them in a classic story structure. The situation and task set the scene. And then actions build excitement and tension as your listener wonders, what will happen? How will the problem be resolved? Of course, it will be resolved, and as you share the results and benefits, you bring the story to a happy ending. Here's another example that you could use if you had to address a kind of negatively phrased question like, tell me about a time when you failed, or tell me about a time when a project didn't work out the way that you hoped. So look at this example. At X company, I created X product or X service, but it was not used by staff as I hoped it would be. I was working as a Y position in the Z department. I asked staff members why they didn't want to use my product or my service, and I learned that it was too cumbersome. I had to rethink ways to streamline it and make it simple. Luckily, there was a very good result. After my reworking and fixing the X product or service to make it easier, staff began to use it. I learned from this experience about the incredible importance of understanding user needs, as well as the huge importance and value in iterating. Negotiation questions and strategies are the final group I'm going to talk about. There are two main questions here that demonstrate that an employer is actually starting to negotiate with you. One question asks about salary and another about start times. Now keep this important point in mind. Being asked these questions doesn't mean you're going to get hired, but it should remind you that this is a negotiation. You can ask for what you want and need. You are not a passive participant in this process. Now, if you're not sure where to get salary information, you could try looking at workbc.ca, Glassdoor, or payscale.com. Hopefully, you've done your research well in advance of being asked this question. Here's how Juvenita answers the salary question.
As a recruiter or as a hiring manager, we usually like to know the range so that, we can determine if you're the right fit instead of us, just wasting each other's time. So explain your reasoning, highlight your experience or education level that can justify your salary. So you can say something like, I feel that a salary between 70,000 to 75,000 is in line with the industry average and reflects my skills and experience level, and I'm flexible and open to hearing about the company's compensation expectation for the position. Always make sure you tell them that you're flexible, right? Because I had some candidates who were not flexible. They wanted, if they need 100,000, they, need 100,000. They were not flexible. And usually sometimes hiring managers, wouldn't want to go with such candidates because we always need somebody who's flexible.
Here are a couple of sample answers to help you talking about your salary expectations. One is, well, I understand that this position pays in the range of $20 to $30 per hour, and I'm okay with that. Or, with my background and experience of over 10 years in this field, I believe I can expect approximately $28 to $30 per hour. And that wraps up our look into 5 types of commonly asked interview questions. More information is available in the downloadable handout. And now, part 3 of the interview workshop is about following up and keeping in touch after applying. You can get started by laying the groundwork for follow-up when you are still inside the interview. So, as one of your final questions, ask, when will a decision be made? And then ask a secondary follow-up question too. If I don't hear from you by then, is it okay if I contact you? Now, your interviewer is almost always going to say yes. So you need to be able to contact him or her or them. And if their address isn't one that you have right now, then make sure that you ask for it. Would you mind to give me your email address? Next step, after the interview, within a day or 24 hours, send a message, probably by email or LinkedIn, thanking the interviewers for meeting you. Write something like what you see on the slide that I'm going to read really quickly. Hi, first name. I'm writing to thank you for taking the time to interview me yesterday. Your questions gave me an opportunity to reflect on my experience in this field. I am really pleased to think about the opportunities I've had, and I look forward to learning and contributing more with your company. If there is any additional information I can provide, please let me know. I'm sure making this decision will be challenging, and I wish you the best as you select the successful candidate.
Yeah, so I feel recruiters, we kind of feel really good when candidates follow up. We feel that they're interested in this position, right? So following up with recruiters is one of the most important things a candidate can do to better his or her chances throughout the interview process. So sometimes the recruiters are so busy, hiring multiple positions. So when you follow up, this gives them an opportunity to look at your application again and move things quickly. But always make sure, you kind of do not keep calling them again and again. Just send them one email and I'm sure recruiters will respond to your email.
Thank you, Juvenita. Now, suppose you get the job. That's awesome. Here's what you do. Begin by responding with a thank you and then wait for the employer to send you something to sign. It could be a letter or it could be a contract. When you get it, review it. Check the salary, benefits, and other perks. And make sure you're comfortable with them. And if this is your first job in Canada, you might accept a salary offer that is a little bit too low. So remember your research about the usual salary and ask for what you think is fair. Now, in case you're completely delighted with the offer, just say yes after you think about it. But always, always, always take one day to consider. That is the norm. You might get a better offer in that time. Now, on the other hand, you might not get the job. And if that's the case, then you should follow up like this. So send another thank you note to the person who interviewed you and be really generous in spirit and write something like what you see on the slide. I'm going to read it really quickly for you, but I just want to say that many people don't get the job they apply for the first time, but they get it the second or the third time. And one of the reasons that they do get the job the second or the third time is because they've kind of kept in touch and maintained their interest with the interviewer. That is exactly what happened to me. I didn't get my first job at ISSofBC. I got it the second time I interviewed. So write something like this. Hi, first name. I was disappointed to receive the news that you had selected a different candidate for the X position. However, I appreciate being considered for the opportunity. I remain interested in your company and will continue following your organization on LinkedIn in case a similar position opens in the near future. It was a pleasure to meet you, and I am grateful for the time and interviews you gave me. If there's anything I can do to strengthen my application for the future, I would be grateful for any suggestions. Thank you again, and best wishes with your ongoing work. That takes us to the end of our job interviews video workshop. Now keep in mind there's a downloadable handout that you can access that will have a lot more examples and information for you. So download that as a resource for your ongoing career progression.
We are ready to wrap up our workshop about getting ready for interviews, talking about 5 commonly asked types of interview questions, and following up. Thanks so much for your attention, and we'll see you in the next video.